Mr. Revere, North Korea conducted its second ballistic missile test in less than a week, just 2 days after the US and South Korea formally announced the start of the annual Uchi Freedom Shield exercises on August 17th. Do you see this launch as a standard reaction to Allied drills, or is Pyongyang signaling a heightened escalatory cycle for the rest of this month?
Well, experience tells us that Pyongyang often engages in muscle flexing, military posturing, and rhetorical bombast in response to the actions and the rhetoric of its adversaries, and particularly in response to U.S. ROK and Japanese demonstrations of military capabilities and readiness. So I think it's probably best to view what the North Koreans have just done, these launches, to view it in that context. Nonetheless, the strong military ties that are developing between North Korea and Russia, the greatly improved PRC, DPRK relations that we're seeing, and the missile and weapons system shortages that are plaguing the United States because of the Iran conflict, all of these things have left the Pyongyang regime feeling rather cocky and confident these days, and they're acting this out. Nevertheless, I think we should be vigilant about various scenarios these days. We don't know what may be coming over the horizon, especially in light of North Korea's growing missile and nuclear capabilities.
North Korea's foreign ministry strongly denounced South Korea's nuclear-powered submarine project, warning of unparalleled power in response and accusing Seoul of seeking a path toward domestic nuclear armament with Washington's tacit approval. How should Washington and Seoul manage North Korea's reaction as South Korea continues to build up its high-tech, long-term naval capabilities?
Mm. Well, the Republic of Korea's nuclear-powered submarine project is going to take several years to develop. And nobody knows that better than Pyongyang. Nonetheless, North Korea certainly can't be pleased with the prospect that South Korea will ultimately have this new capability. So I think we should expect North Korea to continue to attack the Republic of Korea's plans, especially since at some point it's going to affect the North-South conventional military balance on the peninsula. But I think right now, the best thing for Seoul and Washington to do is continue to work, to continue to move forward on these plans and on the implementation of the project in a very steady way and not overreact to the North's rhetoric, which is obviously designed to sort of shake up the box a little bit and make people nervous, which is what the North Koreans do.
With the upcoming Ochi Freedom Shield exercises testing command structures and phase 2 transition of wartime operational control OPCON to South Korea, how well positioned is the US-ROK alliance to maintain strong deterrence while navigating Pyongyang's predictable weapons cycle?
Yeah. Well, in my view, the alliance remains highly capable, very strong, and more sophisticated militarily than it's ever been, and better trained than it's ever been. But the reality is that North Korea's nuclear and missile challenges are growing quickly. US deterrent capabilities are being strained because of the war against Iran. And North Korea's reported new deployments to help Russia in its war against Ukraine, I think, are providing North Korea with a very valuable training ground, if you will. A training ground in which they can learn modern warfighting tactics and things like how to use drones in combat. I don't think this last issue, to be very frank, is getting the attention that it deserves in South Korea. The ROK's unwillingness to provide Ukraine with defensive weapon systems and offensive weaponry, I think that sends a pretty bad message right at this juncture. And it basically tells Pyongyang that North Korea's involvement in Russia's war is not going to come with any political, diplomatic, or military penalty. That's not a good message right now. And I'm hoping that the leadership in Seoul, with hopefully some urging from Washington, will rethink its approach on this, because those systems, those capabilities that are being developed by the North Koreans, ultimately will come into play in any action that North Korea might take against South Korea.
Looking at the broader health of the partnership, as someone who has closely tracked the US ROK alliance over decades, how do you assess the current durability of the partnership as Seoul navigates intense US China rivalry and domestic political debate over its long-term strategic positioning?
Well, to paraphrase what I said a moment ago, the alliance is strong, capable, and well prepared, probably better prepared than ever to fulfill its deterrent and warfighting missions. But I do sense some difficulties on the near-term horizon for the overall relationship between the United States and South Korea and the alliance itself. There are several issues that have been percolating for some time that are going to require very careful handling by both the United States and the Republic of Korea. For example, there are some interesting and serious differences between the United States and the Republic of Korea regarding OPCON transfer, transfer of wartime operational control. There are differences about off-peninsula operations by U.S. forces. In other words, operations in the region that are not directly related to the role of defending the Republic of Korea. There are differences regarding policy towards China. There are concerns in Seoul about new tariffs that are being applied on the Republic of Korea. There are concerns about U.S. force levels in Korea and whether those force levels will remain stable. There's the Kupang dispute, which continues to linger out there. And I think there are also concerns in South Korea about whether, when, and how the United States might opt to somehow accommodate or accept the permanence of North Korea's nuclear weapons. You look at that agenda, that's a pretty daunting agenda, quite frankly, for the two countries. And it's going to take considerable wisdom and hard work and leadership to prevent any one of these issues, or the combination of all of them, from undermining the quality of bilateral cooperation.
Going to China has traditionally viewed North Korea as a strategic buffer zone, but Pyongyang's deepening military partnership with Moscow seems to give Kim Jong-un alternative leverage. Is Beijing genuinely uneasy about the Russia DPRK alignment, and can Washington use that wedge to re-engage China on peninsula security?
That's an important question. I think it's true that Kim Jong-un's leverage has indeed increased thanks to his very robust and growing cooperation with Russia. No less importantly, North Korea's intense efforts to strengthen its ballistic missile and nuclear weapons capabilities, and its determination to remain a de facto nuclear weapon state. I think all of these things have changed the nature of the North Korean threat and the role that North Korea now plays on the Korean Peninsula and in the region. I think it's probably fair to say that there was a time when Beijing would have preferred that North Korea not be a nuclear weapons power. But the PRC, I think, has resigned itself to this new reality that I talked about. And China, as we know, no longer uses denuclearization rhetoric to describe its approach towards North Korea. And at the same time, Beijing has responded to Moscow's new ties with North Korea by greatly improving its own relations with Pyongyang. And I think in this new context, I don't really see any room for the United States to somehow try to pry China away from its current approach on North Korea. On the contrary, in fact, I think the overall context of US-China relations, in that overall context, Beijing may actually now see North Korea's robust nuclear, ballistic missile, and conventional capabilities as useful in deterring the United States and in complicating Washington's regional military calculus.
Trilateral security ties between Washington, Seoul, and Tokyo have been institutionalized significantly over the past couple of years. From your experience in East Asian diplomacy, what is the single biggest threat to maintaining this momentum in all three capitals?
I think this has been one of the most positive developments that I've witnessed in the region in many decades. As someone who has served for many years in Korea and in Japan, it was always on my agenda and the agenda of my bosses at the State Department to promote this sort of cooperation. But to your question about what could possibly undermine this and threaten this momentum, domestic politics in South Korea and in Japan, the lingering burden of history and historical memory, particularly in Korea, about the tragic history that it has had with Japan over the years, the lingering bitterness that many people feel in the Republic of Korea. Sometimes that bursts out from almost nowhere at times and affects the relationship. So I think what is required right now is some wise and forward-looking leadership in both Seoul and Tokyo. The two countries and leaders in the two countries need to find a way to manage their historical differences. You can't forget them, you can't erase them, but you can manage them. And I think it's important in both capitals and in both countries to avoid political posturing for domestic political purposes. And the most important thing is for both Korea and Japan to think strategically about how important this relationship is with each other and with the United States, and make the appropriate calculation and make the appropriate decisions based on that strategic thinking.
My last question for today.
Sure.
There is ongoing debate about how the US-ROK alliance would respond to a potential crisis in the Taiwan Strait. From a diplomatic perspective, how should Washington and Seoul manage expectations regarding South Korea's role without compromising peninsula deterrence?
In a word, quietly. I think it's very important for the conversations that are happening between Washington and Seoul to continue as we talk about various scenarios in the region. I think it's extremely important that these conversations take place not in the pages of the newspapers or on the television airwaves, but in quiet rooms among people who understand the importance of these issues and how they need to be addressed. I think the United States needs to respect the unique position that Korea has at this moment and why it has that position. But I also think that South Korea needs to understand that this is a real threat, not in the near term necessarily, but at some point down the line, there could be a crisis in the Taiwan Strait. And I think South Korea has a special responsibility to work very closely with the United States and think through these issues and what can be done, along with, obviously, what can't be done. And I think as good partners and allies, if we have that frank discussion quietly, I think there may be a path forward.